Today on the podcast, we have Jake Boly. He is the founder of thatfitfriend. In my opinion, the best in the game right now doing shoe content. He has an extensive history in the media business as well. So we're gonna do like a 2025 shoe guide. I want to get his opinion on just like what's the best options for whatever training style. Talk about maybe some trends you see within the shoe industry and maybe like what the next few years look like. He's also has some cool projects that he is currently working on. So we're going to touch on that, and then we'll just see where it goes from there. So Jake, thanks for joining. Hopefully that was a good intro. I just kind of winged it. Maybe start off with giving a few minute intro as to who you are.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to say first, like training shoes. Don't do all encompassing shoes here. Like training shoes are my little niche and my little bubble. So I don't wanna have people up in arms for being actual like shoe fanatics, hype beasts, etc. Be like, fuck that guy. Training shoes. That's where I
I
live.
I would. I mean, I thought that was just obvious, but I guess my bad.
Mm, all good. Yeah, but I run that Fit Friend. I've now been running this for almost 4 years. Started as
Wow.
a website and YouTube channel. I know, dude. Like the last time we talked, it was like maybe a year and a half in, year in.
Hmm.
A lot of different stressors and worries in life then compared to now. But yeah, man, been building that up and have built a really solid community of shoe lovers, fitness lovers. I've been a strength coach now for 12 years, have my master's in sports science, bachelor's in exercise science. And so with what I try to do and how I build my reviews, it's blending in that coaching background with the actual shoe and talking about, how a shoe's midsole and the drop can alter your mechanics and shift things for you accordingly. But yeah, the main shoes that I have a lot of interest in review are barefoot shoes, weightlifting shoes, and training shoes, aka the shoes that all fitness lovers like to use, the more niche shoes that don't get talked about as much or carried in store. And yeah, man, it's been a really cool journey building it and building the community and connecting with a lot of folks, getting to talk to yourself now for a second time, running it back. Um, yeah, man, I'm just grateful to be on the channel and I appreciate the time.
Yeah, you got it. And I would say we've been online friends for years, just kind of working side by side, a little bit different niches, but kind of in the same world. I actually first met you online, obviously, when you were at Barbend, and
Mm.
I wrote some sort of home gym article for Barbend. Um,
Mm.
so that was probably like 6, 7 years ago.
A while, dude.
Yeah.
Long time. A lot of
Uh-huh.
life has happened since then.
A lot of life has happened. Well, we're in 2025. I myself, unless I'm like following you, it's really hard to keep track of like what are the best shoes. And I actually have on my list what you mentioned. So, best training shoes, best weightlifting shoes, best barefoot options, and it's really hard. I understand it's really hard because a lot of that is just personal preference. But for like this discussion, you take it as you want, but I'm thinking just like a broad, thinking like a broad audience of like people who are already lifting, because that's most people that'll listen to this. But yeah, I mean, any sort of insight into those? I don't want to go. I don't necessarily want to go one by one by one.
For
But
sure.
yeah.
Well, how about we start with training shoes? We could talk
Yep.
about like, two or three really good all-encompassing options. And I think you make a really good point there. When we talk about best on the internet, it's tough because best is what people tend to look to and search for, but then there's always like that nuance in there. So we got to make sure we're like, hey, best for this context, best for this person, best for this foot anatomy, best for this training, yada yada. But it's like I think people get sometimes up in arms because like that's not the best, and it's like, well, hold on. First off, we got to play the game a little bit and talk about how people are actually looking for information. Because if we made titles that were super nuanced and how they should be, nobody would find the information. So there is that weird game of having to walk that. So I totally appreciate you kind of segueing into like,
Hmm.
hey, when we say best, we mean like this kind of nuanced approach versus like this is definitively all the time best. But yeah, let's talk training shoes first. I can go over three shoes that I think are crushing it really well and like doing really well, and I think companies that are doing a really good job with their stuff. And I think it would be more appropriate to start with the bigger brands first and then work our way down to the more smaller niche brands. But when it comes to bigger brands, I think two companies that have really good cross training shoes out right now include Under Armour with the Rain 6 and then the Drop Set 3 from Adidas. So these are two different shoes that have a lot of contrast with their feel on the foot and what they deliver in the gym. So the Rain 6, why can it be great? Why is it awesome? Number one, tends to be pretty durable. Number two, it has a lower drop at 2 millimeters, so it's going to give you that flatter foot position. And then number three, you can actually take out the insole or drop in midsole because the midsole, aka that like cushiony feel, that thing that's usually that foam layer in your shoe, that shoe has a drop in insole, which means that the midsole is the insole. So if you take that out, you could put a separate insole in, and then it gives you this really cool, like barefoot shoe, pseudo cross training shoe feel. So it's kind of like my cheat code for anybody who's like, I want a training shoe that looks like a training shoe, but has a zero drop and has a super minimalist feel. That's kind of my cheat code there. A lot of people don't think about that or do that. And that's a great model for having that lower drop. You keep that insole in for a little more cushion, but then take it out to get that more cross training shoe or more barefoot shoe feel. With the Drop Set 3, the reason this shoe can be fantastic is if you like more of like a pseudo weightlifting shoe feel. So, more of your traditional, you have a slightly higher drop. This model has a 6 millimeter drop. And you like a shoe that has a little bit more pliability in the forefoot. Like it feels very much like a traditional weightlifting shoe built into a training shoe. This can be a great model for you because this shoe has a dual density midsole. So basically up in the forefoot, it's a little bit more pliable and flexible, and it's a little bit lower to the ground with its stack height and its toe spring. So it's pretty easy to ground your toes for most movements. And the heel is very platform-like, very dense. So if you're squatting, if you're cleaning, if you like a little bit more heel, so for example, if you're a taller lifter and you like a little bit more heel for range of motion purposes and mechanics purposes, this is usually one of the shoes that I'll suggest looking into first because that higher drop, the weightlifting shoe feel, it can usually feed really well into back squats, front squats, hack squats, leg presses, where you need a little bit of help achieving these deeper ranges of motion. That model also has a decently wide toe box. It's not crazy wide, but wide enough for, I would say, the vast majority of standard foot anatomies. And then it also has this nice little cool cutout in the bottom for a lot of ventilation. So it keeps the weight of the shoe pretty light and ventilated. Now, granted, the downfall of that is if you need a shoe for daily wear as well, that can actually really hinder this shoe because if you're walking around, for example, let's say New York City in your training shoes or even somewhere else that's more remote and it's damp and wet, water just shoots into that hole. So it's like one of those weird niche things that you don't think about because in theory you're like, oh, it's sick from a gym perspective. But then you're like, wait, hold on. That's not going to be good for daily wear if it's wet outside. My sock is going to be wet as shit and I'm going to get like a, stinky foot, etc. And so that's like speaking to like the best nuance here is great for lifting, fantastic stability, but like weird things that can kind of totally tank that shoe's performance. So those are two, I would say, bigger brand shoes that are working really well. The Reebok Nano X5 just dropped, and I will say it is a superior shoe to the Nano X3 and Nano X4 if you're a Nano fan. And if you wore those shoes and you're like, the arch fucking sucks, the toe box is way too narrow, the X5 feels similar to the X2 in the sense that it's a little bit wider through the toe box. It feels like the upper volume has been improved a little bit. And it's a little bit more pliable and flexible. So it doesn't run as dense or as clunky as those models did. So just to tack that on there as another big brand that I think has made a pretty really good, well-rounded shoe for the vast majority of recreational lifters and athletes. Looking into these smaller brands, some of the shoes that I think have been crushing it include number one, the Rad 1 V2. This is my newest model in the works here. I'm sure a lot of y'all have seen the hype around this model. They've done, I think, a very good job at storytelling and building the brand and their element of the branding. We also have the Haze Trainer up here from Strike Movement. This is one of my goated shoes for being an all-arounder and also for travel and stuff. And I'll unpack why I like each of these shoes. And then I also think Tier has built a really good model this year with the CXT2. And I'm sure I'm leaving off some companies, but I'll focus on those three because those are the three that I think usually get the most attention from the smaller brand space in the sense of building shoes that kind of all encompass a lot of different training styles. So with the Rad 1 V2, right out of the box, what I like about this shoe is it's a little bit more plush than the V1. So it has a softer feel for box jump and athletic style days. And I think if you're a CrossFit focused individual, the V2 I think will feel really good for your needs. Now, what's interesting, Jake, and I'm curious if you've seen it in the home gym space, is this wave construction here with the outsole. Have you seen how much this has made people mad and like upset people in the shoe space?
No,
There's been like
I
Reddit threads talking about this, like attacking, and it's like, bro, relax. Like, relax. It's a shoe, and like the way it's like language is like this is not even constructive criticism. This is just like dragging the shoe because you don't like the look of it, which is like that's a whole nother way I think to unpack and talk about feedback. But the V2 has been pretty solid, and with its construction being a little bit more pliable and plush, it's a really good shoe for doing it all. So if you're a CrossFit individual or somebody who's doing a lot of cross training and you like to do some heavy strength stuff, I think the V2 can be a great option. It also has a sick grip with this outsole, grips really well with this herringbone tread, and it feels a little bit wider than the V1 did. So if the V1 felt a little bit too snug for you, but you were just like kind of on the cusp of, like this almost fits, but it's a little bit too snug, you might actually fit better in the V2. It's not going to be noticeably wider for like a 3E, 4E foot width, but it does have a slightly more spacious fit, I think, from a width context. With the Hayes trainer, this model is going to be best served for most individuals who are lifting. They want a training shoe for casual wear, and then also they want a training shoe for some cross training and CrossFit here and there. So this model has been one of my go-to shoes because this shoe has a super flexible midsole. So if you want a lot of ground feel and you want a lot of flexibility, this shoe typically can give you that. I often language them as kind of like this pseudo in-betweener between a training shoe and more of like your traditional barefoot or minimalist feeling shoe. And that model is going to be fantastic also for daily wear. So if you're somebody who is traveling a lot and you want that single shoe that you can dress up in a nicer outfit, but then also wear to the gym and just go completely ham in with your lifting and cross training, that's where the Hayes trainer I think makes the most sense. Some issues with the Hayes trainer is that the fit can be sometimes polarizing. So for very thick feet, high insteps, it can feel a little bit too snug with the gusset and the forefoot upper. And then also it does have a slight taper through the midfoot, so that can also be a little bit off-putting for flatter feet. But from an all-in-one shoe that also works pretty well for casual use, the Hayes trainer can be a fantastic option to look into. And then the Tier CXT2, the reason this model I've really enjoyed compared to the CXT1 is they've made a lot of tweaks to this shoe that plague the CXT1. So for example, in the first iteration of this model from Tier, we had midfoot break issues. This year we have a TPU around the midfoot. So for my CrossFit folks out there, this model typically does last a little bit longer. Also, it runs a little bit denser. So if you like denser feeling training shoes, that can be an awesome option to go with. It has a slightly higher drop as well, so it's going to give you a bit more heel if you like a little bit more heel for range of motion purposes. And they make a wide option. So they have a regular option and then a wide option. And then actually, I want to tack on one more model because I just saw it out of the corner of my eye. The Born Primitive Savage 1. These have also been awesome. This is going to be the shoe, I think, for anybody who likes more of your old school training shoe feel. You like a much more toned down shoe. You like a slightly lower stack height, a more dense midsole. That's where this shoe is going to excel. It feels really similar, or most similar, I guess, that's not very good English, to some of the older nanos out there. It also has a wider toe box, and cheat code, if you do have a wider foot, you can take out this insole and it's going to give you a more spacious fit and it's going to feel better for flat feet. So little cheat code there, as long as you don't mind a denser ride with the shoe to get a bit more of a feeling of width with it. My only gripe with this shoe, and I'm sure others feel the same if you've ever tried it, is this tongue can feel pretty aggressive, this mesh tongue. They need to add a little bit of cushion and padding here. I think that would hedge their bets on having any form of friction because higher insteps, thicker feet, you could sometimes feel that with the BP Savage 1. But if you don't necessarily have that outright anatomy, issue, I guess, so to speak, with some shoes, you'll be right at home with that model, especially if you want a wider forefoot and a slightly more, relaxed or less aggressive taper through the midfoot. So I just shot a ton of cross-training shoe information at you. I'm sure you're just like, dude, shut the fuck up and move on already. But those are models that I would look into for different reasons.
I was thinking, man, he really knows his stuff. I also thought I saw Born Primitive came out with a shoe, and I thought that was really interesting. If you had to choose one, which would you go with?
So my personal shoe that I've loved the most lately has been the Hayes trainer, but that's because like, dude, I'm always traveling and stuff. And for me, I am much more simplistic with my taste and appearance. Like for example, the Rad V2. A lot of people have found that this shoe is very off-putting with its appearance, but I also don't have drip, and I know that. So I think the people who think this looks like a basketball shoe, they have more drip and they have more style. I get why they like that, and I get why I don't like that because like I'm a simpleton. Just give me, a classic-looking shoe that I can wear out and about. That has been my go-to shoe for, I would say, like the last, honestly, 2.5 years of the shoe that I find the most in my rotation. But a lot of that also has to do with, my lifestyle and how I like to use that shoe. The Savage 1 and the Rad models have also been really heavily worn shoes in my rotation as well. And the Savage one I'll wear for lifting sessions when I want a bit more toe box room, and then the Rad one I'll wear for CrossFit focused WODs where, I'm going to be doing a little bit of everything, blending a lot of different modalities together.
All right, cool. Weightlifting shoes.
Yeah, so with weightlifting shoes, it's interesting because I feel like the last time we talked, there hasn't been a lot of changes in weightlifting shoes in the sense of new models coming out. Like we have some spin-off models, like the Tier Force model, which I never even touched because it's like $300 and I refuse to pay that for a single shoe, especially one that like, bro, I'm not cleaning enough to justify spending that much. Like
Yes.
people dropping 300 plus on a shoe for a 185 pound clean. I'm like, come on now. um, but some models that I've really enjoyed with the weightlifting shoe space. Let me see if I have any up here. Include the Tier L1 lifter. So that model is going to be fantastic if you do want a wider toe box. Now, with the L1 lifter, if you have a wide foot, cheat codes here. Size up a half size, take out the insole. It will give it an entirely different fit if you have a wider foot. I think some folks try it and like, this isn't that wide. I think if you size it correctly and you also take out the insole, it helps it a lot because that insole can be a little bit aggressive with like that weird heel to midfoot like layering on the side, basically their sidewalls, and it gives you a little bit of press into the foot, and I think that's what deters people from it. But the L1 lifter has been pretty solid. It can have some outsole lipping issues, which I've seen, but generally speaking, if it does have that, they will replace it. Like that's usually a manufacturer's defect. And then outside of that, I'm trying to think. The Addy Power 3 has been pretty solid. I've enjoyed that shoe, but the toe box can feel a little bit like lack of flexibility. Very, simplistic TPU midsole heel. Feels very stable, very consistent with other models out there. And then also the Innovate Fastlift Power G380 has also been one of my favorite shoes, but that shoe I think can also be a little polarizing because it has a very flexible forefoot. And if you like a much more like planted, heavier, anchored feel with your weightlifting shoe, that can be somewhat off-putting with that model. So if you like a more flexible, playful forefoot for getting up on the toes when you're cleaning and snatching and stuff and you're hitting your pull, that model can be fantastic. But again, it's not going to be for everybody because that can deter some folks who really want that like anchored, bulky feel with their weightlifting shoe.
Are there certain weightlifting shoes, like if you want some weightlifting shoes and you only want to use it for squat and deadlift, is that any different than like when you are doing like the ollie lifts?
To an extent, and that's where you really get into the weeds with the nuance here. So, for example, like if you're somebody who just wants a weightlifting shoe for squats, would not recommend using for deads, but for squats, and like let's say you want them for like leg presses and hack squats, because that's how I use them too, just to get more range, because I'm a lanky dude with shit range of motion. You can get away with most models. Now, if you are a taller individual, or if you're somebody that knows your range of motion is usually not that great, I would suggest looking into models with slightly higher heel to toe drops or heel elevations. So, for example, the industry norm tends to sit around like 0.75 inches. If you're super lanky, you might want to look at that, or like 0.83 from the Reebok Legacy Lifter, or 0.86, I think. And then also like the Tier L1, I believe, has a drop around there. Some of the lower drop shoes, like the Lifter PR3 from Reebok or the Adidas Powerlift models, they're around like zero point 0.6. Again, it's not going to make the biggest difference, but suggestion that if you are somebody who does fall into that camp of lack of range of motion, a little bit lankier, higher heels can typically align better for your needs. Now, to answer your question, is there a difference for, your more traditional lifter versus your weightlifter? Yes. And I think that's where I will defer to most weightlifting channels and athletes and coaches who are, they're knee deep in that sport all the time, because there are components of lockdown with the upper. There's also components with the outsole grip and how folks lift to feed into how the shoe is built and their mechanics for catching cleans and catching snatches. But I think for most weightlifters, as you just do your sport more and you try different shoes, you'll naturally start to gravitate towards certain models. And what I would suggest is asking yourself why. Are you liking the shoe just because the brand hype, or are you liking it because there's an element with the midsole or heel that really resonates with you? Or maybe it's the upper construction and the straps, or the BOA system, for example, in the Lusting model from Adidas that RIP, that model was sick, but they don't fucking make it anymore. Was there something there that you just really liked and resonated with? And that's where, like, I think with everything, and this is probably similar with home gyms, like for most people, the standard really well-built squat rack will probably work. But as you get more niche with your asks, that's where probably the more specialized stuff and more nuanced approaches and construction features really come into play. And Same thing happens here with weightlifting shoes. But for most folks, doesn't really matter. Invest in a good pair. It'll last forever. As you get super niche, sure, it'll start to matter more, but realistically, you won't know until you just try enough to figure out what exactly works best for you.
Yes, makes sense. And as somebody in the home gym world, you describing the training shoes reminds me of somebody explaining the types of barbells you can add. So, um, yeah, good to know. Barefoot shoes. So I think barefoot shoes are, they're the home gym community doesn't get much attention from shoe brands, but the barefoot shoes have actually given quite a bit of attention. So I think a lot of home gym owners are pretty familiar with shoe brand or the barefoot shoe brands, but or at least a couple of them. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on barefoot shoes in general, and then just some specific brands.
Yeah, so I think barefoot shoes are starting to grow in that community too because I feel like y'all at home, like y'all with your home gyms, you don't put on shoes. You just go outside, you lift, and
We
you're,
don't care
yeah,
what they
it's like,
look like
yeah,
either.
you
Yeah,
don't care.
yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I totally
Uh huh.
understand that. And I think too, with barefoot shoes themselves, they're trying to really break into the fitness scene. And I think they've done a really good job. And I think the understanding of why a lower drop, more toe splay, and more ground feel is important for athletes and lifters. But I think it can be a little bit tougher, or at least a higher bar to entry with some of the more, specific types of training. Plus, with like things like high rocks, CrossFit, etc., you're not going to be able to just slap on a barefoot shoe and go do that activity. You're going to need to acclimate, and that still might not get you prepped enough to wear that type of shoe and the stress it can put on your feet and ankles for that. But at home gym makes total sense because for mostly strength hypertrophy and your more standardized metcon and cross training, barefoot shoe can typically work really great. But yeah, it's been cool seeing them grow in popularity over the last few years. I do feel like we're starting to hit a point right now with barefoot shoes though, where there are a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and I think a lot of these cooks haven't really earned their spot at the table because you're seeing more people now white label shoes from Alibaba and just
Mm.
slap a brand on it and then upcharge you for it. It's really interesting. If you go to Amazon, you'll see like endless options, which look, it's good for the budget friendly folks out there, but I think it also does take away from companies that are truly trying to build with more unique materials or styles and whatnot. Um, but it has been very cool seeing them grow. And I think the home gym space and the barefoot shoe community make a lot of sense because, again, like to your point, you don't care what they look like. For the types of workouts y'all are doing and stuff at home, like for example, like I'm barefoot right now at home. If I had a squat rack and I wanted to lift after this, I probably would just go barefoot until I needed to put on shoes or needed shoes for a specific thing. But it makes total sense. In the sense of barefoot shoes that I've really been enjoying this year, there are three models that come to mind. Number one is the Tolos Archetype 2.0. I know we share a mutual love for that model and that company. And then we also have the Innovate Bear XF. Their new model, I think, is really sick. There's a lot of cool little nuances to it that I think make it work for certain populations really well. And then I also really like the Vivo Barefoot Modus Strength. It is a little bit more pricey, but if you could find them on sale and knock that price down, I do think that's a shoe that fills an ask and a void that a lot of other barefoot shoes just don't right now. So with the Tolos Archetype 2.0, I would be curious also why you love this shoe, but for me personally, it's a shoe that you can train in and dress up. It looks pretty good. Price point is pretty good. And also the founder, Evan, I think is just a really good salt of the earth dude. You can tell he is in it for the right reason. He's not just trying to pump out shoes for the sake of doing so. He puts a lot of thought and curation into his stuff. And so anybody who does that in this day and age is a small company who's not just, selling out to push as much. I'm a big fan of. But for you, why has the Tolos model like been one of your go-tos?
I mean, yeah, they're the best looking ones, and I don't feel weird wearing them out in public. I think um, that's why I almost don't. I have a pair of Tolos, and then I have a pair of barefoot shoes. I
Mm,
typically work out in the barefoot ones, and then I use the Tolos ones for everyday use. I mean, I've owned both models. If I have the white ones, so I don't. I like working out in them. I just I don't. I mean, they're good looking shoes, and I don't want to get them dirty all the time. So I like them. I feel good. It's I don't like. I wouldn't wear them like every single day out, But sometimes I just have that feeling like, I want to wear my barefoot shoes to change pace, and it has the wider toe box. So not necessarily like for the reasons I should be wearing them, but I really like them for because they look good. And also, I wanted to point out why you were discussing home gyms. Like it's not like you're going to a commercial gym and it's awkward to like go change your shoes. So you can have like three different pairs of shoes, and one part of your workout you can wear the barefoot shoes, and the other part you can wear whatever else, running shoes or whatever. So um, yeah, I just wanted to point that out too.
No, and I love how you like to rotate shoes because I think you're doing it the right way in the sense of, integrating in barefoot shoes into your lifestyle and your current day to day. I think just a quick side note, I think at times some of the barefoot shoe people can be a little bit too gung ho of like, you need barefoot shoes all the time, you need toe space. Like dudes, like relax. Like you can integrate them in and get a benefit of barefoot shoes while also still wearing other shoes that might be more stylish, might give you a bit more cushion if you want that. But just putting that out there now, I'm a big fan of rotating footwear for performance needs, looking at shoes as tools versus going all in on one single thing and trying to force a square peg into a round hole in the event that doesn't necessarily work. If you love barefoot shoes all the time, sick, use them. If you can acclimate to them properly and stuff and not beat yourself up, awesome. But to your point, there are days, yeah, where it's like, I just want to, you know what? I just want a little bit more ground feel. I want a little bit more play with my feet, just to get them out, get the dogs out of the normal shoes. And I'm the same way. But speaking to the other shoes, the Innovate Bear XF. I'm going to see if I have that model readily available. I don't think I do.
I was gonna say it feels like a lot of the shoes are coming out wider as well. It's not just barefoot shoes anymore that are coming out with wider toe boxes.
Yeah, I think they're starting to push the industry norm into slightly wider variations. Like even Nike has gotten wider, and they're notorious
Yes.
for being a narrower shoe. So it's been really cool seeing that. I do think that's a net positive for everybody. Now I'm curious when we'll see Nike, Adidas, Reebok, etc. start rolling out their barefoot shoes because they will eventually get into that game. They likely already have some in the works. It just probably takes them longer to bring them to market.
Mm.
I am curious what that's going to do to the industry and how that's going to change things.
I think it's a 1 plus 1 equals 3 thing. I think it grows everybody if someone like
Yeah,
Nike comes in and says we barefoot shoes are good.
I agree because it's only going to bring more eyeballs to everybody. It's the power of the Nikes out there that once they do something, others will typically follow suit, and then all of a sudden everybody's kind of reaching for that thing, and everybody kind of gets lifted. I agree with you. And I do think for companies who are building barefoot shoes and I would say more so in it for the wrong reasons and not really building a good community and stuff and reputation. I think those are the people that will eventually get weeded out because why would you go for the shoddy company over a smaller company that's legit or a Nike that is going to have pretty standardized quality? But that would be an interesting thing to observe and see in this industry. I feel.
Yeah, that's super interesting. That is the same dilemma everybody had when Nike Strength came into the home gym. I mean, they've been around what, a year and a half, and I don't think they've made a dent into anybody's business really. So, I mean,
I'm
obviously they have a huge shoe brand, but I don't know. I think more eyeballs. I don't think like the current barefoot community is going to go, oh, Nike, let me go get some Nikes. They're going to stick with their smaller niche brands.
percent. It'll be more like the athletes who have been hesitant of trying them because like those things are fucking ugly. They would be the
Yes.
ones who go try the Nikes out. I think. To your point, yeah, I think you're on the money there. It'll definitely because like I could see some, and also like the barefoot shoe community is very interesting in the sense that like they got a lot of strong takes, and so I'm sure they're gonna be like, "Fuck Nike and their big brand and their shoe. Like big, that's big shoe coming for us." Like, dude, relax.
Right.
Like, come on, chill out.
Yes. Uh, totally. Any other like trends you see coming over the next few years
With barefoot shoes
with
or
just
just in
like
general?
shoes in general? Actually, you
Yeah,
didn't finish your. Did you bear? You did
I
finish your
didn't.
barefoot list.
I didn't.
You
I
didn't.
didn't.
No,
So we
keep
got
going with that, and then we'll
all right.
ask.
We got
Then we'll. Yeah.
We got the Bear XF. That's a model that I think could be really good if you like a more sock-like fitting shoe in the sense of the sole kind of wraps around the shoe, so it's kind of more of that rounded sole. Gives you a bit more of like the sportier feel. It can start to take away if you really like a planted shoe. So, for example, my powerlifters out there, you likely know of Notorious Lift and Avances. They're going to feel a little bit more sporty and less anchored or planted compared to those shoes. The grip is really good still, but with that rounded sole, it's going to be a little bit more playful. That can be a great model, I think, for more of your like traditional cross training focused person, your athlete person who wants a shoe for multi directional work, a little bit of everything, but then also does like having a bit more of an insole because it has that boomerang insole, which is a slightly thicker foam insole with it that gives it a bit more cushion. The Vivo Barefoot Modus Strength is going to be your go-to model if you're somebody who does a lot of CrossFit or cross training and you want a barefoot shoe for that. That's not going to absolutely get beat to shit with that type of workout. It's a little bit more of a heavy model, but with that outsole wrap and its midfoot support, it generally does a really good job with abrasion resistance, and it does a really good job, I think, of giving you lockdown for multi-directional work, plyos, and whatnot. Now, that model is going to run a little bit hotter because the upper is heavier, but it does a really great job, I think, at filling that barefoot shoe ask for CrossFit cross training and more explosive stuff where you really want good sidewalls and a 4 foot toe box to lock down your foot and keep you in place.
Any more?
Should we talk trends?
Yes, let's go to trends. And so I would say the barefoot trend. I randomly saw barefoot shoes like I don't know 10 years ago in the commercial gyms, but they were even more funny looking than they are today, and they're still relatively niche, but I would say they're a trend that has popped up over the last few years. Any other trends that you see in the next few years, or any sort of predictions within the shoe industry, I should say?
I think the shoe industry is going to. I'm hoping actually. I'm not. I don't even think. I'm hoping that it continues to consolidate in the sense of building shoes with the purpose of being used for a little bit of everything. For example, right now, I think bigger companies build very niche training shoes to the extent of like, like I'm so overwhelmed by how many options you have. Like, what do I physically buy? And that's why I do enjoy some of these smaller brands because they don't have that much variety and they build to hit a bunch of asks with one single shoe. And that's why I've liked the smaller companies that I mentioned in this video because their shoes can kind of work for everything. It's not like a Nike where it's like you get a free Metcon model, you can't go powerlift in that shoe or do heavier strength stuff because you'll beat it to shit and you'll compress, and you also can't do CrossFit in it. And like there are discrepancies there. So I'm hoping that companies will continue to consolidate and really try to make more all-encompassing shoes because I think that's a true essence of a cross-training shoe. I don't think a cross-training shoe should be so hyper-specialized unless they really are marketing it for that because I think it's just it limits your market cap there in general. Another trend that we've already talked about, wider toe boxes. We're seeing it across all companies right now, and I think that's credit to a lot of the barefoot shoe movement and companies trying not to get left in the dust there with too narrow of shoes. And then I'm trying to think of other trends. I think the trend of just knowing more about your feet is going to continue to grow. So, giving a hell about how a shoe fits for your anatomy and the data points there, and understanding like your true foot width, and then companies also meeting you halfway and languaging, hey, like this is going to be a shoe for this type of width. We don't see a lot of that now. I think that will continue to grow and build as barefoot shoes, wider toe boxes, etc., and more knowledge come out about foot width and importance of toe splay and stabilization when you're lifting and stuff. I think that will also be a trend we'll continue to see, and that will benefit all parties involved.
Do you have a take on like toe spacers?
Yeah, they can be a useful tool for sure. I think being able to put them on at like night and stuff when you're chilling and like given like especially if you wear traditional shoes all day, like just getting your toes a little bit more spread out. It's like any other form of range of motion mobility training in my opinion. Like doing it a little bit over time can give you a lot of bang for your buck. The people who are super hung up on doing it all the time, I we could talk about that later, but I think it is a good thing to integrate, and it's like with anything else, just use it from a progressive overload standpoint. So use them maybe like 3 times a week to start for 30 minutes to an hour, basically whenever it gets uncomfortable, and then slowly build in from there, and your foot will naturally start to gravitate towards the environment you put it in, and that's why like people are noticing, oh, my foot's getting wider with barefoot shoes. It's like, yeah, you're putting it into an environment to where it's going to fill the space around it. similar to, training, if you do the same thing over and over again with the purpose and intent of filling a certain thing or fulfilling a certain thing, the body will naturally adapt. And so similarly, same take with toe spacers, super useful tool. Um, and I don't know if you saw that story the other day, but I was like making fun of this shoe that had toe spacers built into it. Like that to
Mm-mm.
me is extreme. That's crazy. But using them as a tool separately, I think can be awesome. It's just like foam rolling and anything else, like any form of light tissue release and range of motion training, mobility work, stuff like that.
Got it. Do you have any, I know I didn't touch on this at the beginning, but any running shoe recommendations for just like maybe someone who isn't a diehard runner?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of what running shoes I've been wearing the most lately. The Mount to Coast I've been wearing a lot, and like I bought those because I was really curious. I'm like, is this like if you hit me enough with marketing on Instagram and stuff, I will eventually purchase the product because I'm like, you know what, fuck you. I want to see if this is actually an influencer product or if it's actually any good. And the Mount to Coast shoes have actually been pretty solid. I like a little bit more of a poppy feel, and their P1 is more their stability shoe, so it's a little bit more dense, and I like that a lot because for me, I enjoy having a bit more of a midsole to push into versus having something that's a little bit softer. So that model has been really sick. I've worn the Rad R1 runner more casually lately because I've really been enjoying the bigger midsole. I'm trying to look around to see what else is in my rotation. Those have been my go-to models so far over the last couple of months. But admittedly, like I've only been doing shorter interval runs, so anywhere from like 400 to 1200 to 1600-meter bouts, and you can usually do that in training shoes. So I've been running a lot more of my training shoes because I was prepping for a High Rocks that I double booked for a wedding weekend this weekend because I'm an idiot. So I trained for High Rocks to not compete in High Rocks. So I was doing a lot of interval runs, but that was mostly in the training shoes that I plan to use for that. Actually, the Innovate Road Fly has also been sick. I've been wearing those a lot. Wider toe box. I almost see them as like kind of a replacement to Ultra and Topo. If you like a slight drop with your shoes, I believe their drop is 4 millimeters. I love a 4 millimeter drop. If you don't want a true zero drop wide toe box shoe, that model can be awesome. But those have been my three go tos right now. Again, like longer distance running, that's not really my bag. And for that type of ask, definitely go look at more running focused individuals and trainers and athletes and stuff because they will know more about that than me and my limited scope of how much I like to run.
Good to know. It's nice to hear someone say that if they don't truly know.
Uh, expert verified, brother.
I mean, clearly you know what you're talking about. I'm sure you could give some recommendations if you really needed to. Um, but all right, anything else on shoes before we, talk about that fit friend?
No, and I think the big thing too is if you listen to this so far and you're like, I am still overwhelmed as shit, just reach out, DM me, or drop a comment on YouTube. I literally hit everybody back. I spend hours a day like replying to other people who are hyper focused on the single thing that I like. So if you do feel overwhelmed, because I know it can feel all like a lot. There's so much information. There's so much construction features that vary, and there's so many different training styles, foot anatomies. Your best bet is to just reach out. I got you. I can help at least suggest options that would probably be best to get you moving with for your needs.
Yeah, I was honestly thinking you need like a live show where you just take in these individual specific questions. I was also thinking like there should be like an app that like you can take a picture of your foot or measure it and it's like this is your dimensions, these are the shoes that would work. Um, but yeah, let's let's talk that fit friend. So you mentioned 4 years. I would just love, I have personally followed it for the last few years, but I'd love to hear from your end, like how has that gone from like day one all the way to year four? Just selfishly, I'd love to hear.
All right, yeah, let's so the brand itself started, I would say, from a pretty good place because coming from Barbend, I think a lot of folks recognize, the content, my name from that, which helped kind of, I think, kickstart a little bit with the channel and the website. And basically, year one through year two, nice steady growth. And like, I've made a point not to do a lot of collabs or a lot of things because I wanted the brand to be able to kind of stand on its own without necessarily leveraging or clout chasing other people to gain following and whatnot. And so for those years, I was very diligent on making sure, grow as organic as possible, really try to answer everybody who comments and DMs and like give back people the time that they invest into the brand early on because it can be, I think, a little bit tougher to invest in a newer channel and stuff. So anybody who did come along that early on, I was super appreciative of. And so those first 2 years were great because the brand grew enough to be able to sustain and kind of, live my lifestyle with. And it's not like it was like making a ton of money, but it was enough for me to kind of get by and be like, okay, like where are we taking it next and whatnot. And then year three comes around. This is last year, and dude, like Google rolled out that eight. I don't know how much you are in like the search space, but the way that FitFriend used to monetize was mostly through the website and through the YouTube channel. And the website was doing really well traffic wise. And it's like I write all my own content. I film videos for everything. I take photos of everything. I run everything by myself. Like I'm not having other people write stuff. I'm not having ghostwriters. I'm not creating stuff with AI and shit like that. And so last year rolls around and basically Google rolls out this algo update and it just completely tanks the site. Like I'm not even kidding you, dude. It went from like 500,000 traffic a month to like 50K overnight. And if you're in the content space, like that's a revenue loss of 80 to 90% overnight, basically. So last year was an absolute clusterfuck from an online content perspective because basically, you got a tech giant that rolled it out an algo update, and you were on the bad end of the receiving side of that, even though you had no idea why. So last year was interesting because, you go through 2 years of growth, and all of a sudden, boom, one of your main breadwinners gets absolutely pummeled for you don't know why, to be honest. It's been a good year of, asking myself, like, am I like really loving this? Do I want to keep doing this? Do I want to keep stay in the content game? Because I know for a fact, like you probably feel this when you're in the content space. Yeah, you live and die by people who are watching your content and find you in your community. Yes, but you really live or die by the algos you're playing on. And they don't give a shit who you are. The big tech companies, they don't care. They're tweaking everything to make as much money as they can. And if you get destroyed in the process, it kind of is what it is. And you're playing a fickle game. And it's really like the goal, I think, of content businesses now is build a community that can cult like as fast as possible and then be able to live and take them away from having to depend on a tech giant for that reach revenue, etc. And so this year's been really good in that lens of kind of opening my eyes to that and looking at that FitFriend from like a 5 year 10 year plan of all right, where do I actually want to take this brand? Because with content businesses alone, I just don't think they have the legs to live unless you're a media company and you own Garage Gym Reviews, Barbend, Morning Truck, like all these companies, and you're just a massive player with all this money. Like you're not gonna be able to live. Indie publishers are dying, and that's because one, you can't find them anymore in search because of how the algo has been updated, and then two, I just think people don't care about written content as much anymore. You have, the search suggestion, like whatever the search AI bubble is at the top of Google, that's going to continue to siphon traffic away from sites. That's going to continue to siphon away revenue from, affiliates, ads, etc. So pure content businesses, I just don't think will have the legs, or at least indie publishers will have the legs without having another extension to their business. And this last year has helped me start to think about that and really build that out. And that's why I'm excited about this year. But dude, I'm telling you, like the algo update was so bad to the site. I created like a little bit of a stink on Twitter, bitching about it. I'm like, hey, what the fuck? Like, what have I
Hmm.
done wrong to like have my site hit this bad? That Google flew me out to their HQ. So they flew me out and 18 other creators or indie publishers from different industries, like snowboard reviewers, you had travel people, you had wedding people. They flew us out to their HQ, and it was really funny. And this is like the most corporate thing ever because I'm like not a corporate person ever. But you go into this event, which is the day of like whatever, you talk into all the engineers and people at Google, and they're talking to you about the search algorithm, and then you kind of share your story and stuff. And the undertone of it all was basically Google was telling us you guys were collateral damage. We don't know why the algo basically hit the sites like it did, or like you guys like it did, and we're trying to fix it. But it's like sick. So all
Well,
these
can't you just
companies that
fix
have,
it?
dude, and all these companies that have laid off their employees and stuff, like thank God, like I didn't have kids to feed or like a ton of employees because a lot of these people, like their income just went like that overnight, and they weren't doing anything wrong to necessarily deserve that, so to speak. So going into this talk, it's like this undertone of like, it's not you, it's us. And it's like, okay, but like what's getting done about it? And then you talk to some of these search engineers, and a lot of the engineers don't even know what's going on with the algo. And I think what's happened is the machine learning at Google, my theory, my tinfoil hat theory, is that when they rolled out that update, I think it was trained on bad data. And so
Mm.
it looked at sites to punish. So think like, your AI sites that are just trying to monetize on shitty ads and affiliates, and they're just built out of pure money focus, not actual niche love and interest. I think they were trying to hit those sites. And what ended up happening is when you look at paper, like my site versus that site, they look very similar. The difference is obviously I'm a person with background and videos and everything else, but for an algo that goes off of machine learning, it likely doesn't know the difference in the nuance there. So I think that's why a lot of smaller indie publishers just got absolutely pummeled by the algo update over the last year. And like, hopefully we will see a trend or a change in 2025. That was kind of also the undertone of like, hey, bear with us. We're going to try to help you, but we can't do it overnight. So we'll see, but that's also why I'm like not banking on the site or anything anymore. It's like that's just kind of a means to an end, and it's nice to have because it is my place for having long form reviews where everything can be kind of organized. But I'm not building that FitFriend anymore from a content only focus.
Well, I mean, too, like if you go into like ChatGPT or Gemini and you're like, hey, what are the best training shoes for me? Like it'll list them and then it'll say, it comes from that fit friend. That fit friend gets nothing.
Nothing. That's it, and
Nothing.
that's what's kind of messed up. And it's funny though too when you use those AI engines because my site was nerfed in Google for so long. You basically had a shadow ban on your site. They can call it whatever it is, but it was basically a shadow ban. My shit wouldn't pop up there, but if you go to Bing, DuckDuckGo, ChatGPT, Claude
Mm,
AI, it's there. And it's like, okay, so clearly Google had an issue with my site for whatever reason, and it got slapped and shadow banned. But they're claiming that no sites were like, bro, fuck off. But that, I mean, to your point, is another issue I think with content businesses. And if you're building only to build content, like it's going to be a bumpy road out there for you, especially with these companies that are taking a lot of your data and information, feeding their little system to feed that out to people, but then not giving any form of accreditation or kickback to you. I feel like if you get used or your site gets used in like a response like that, and somebody clicks through that, like a chat GPT should give you a little bit of a payback for, hey, we used your answer and then somebody clicked on your site because they found it valuable enough. We will pay you for that. But then my question I then goes to my cynical side is like, well, why wouldn't they just like, go for people who aren't going to make a fuss about that? Like they could easily do that and it'd probably fulfill the search intent just the same because somebody who doesn't know doesn't know.
yeah, that's super interesting. And I haven't done like a deep dive in on data on this, but I've noticed like there's less people clicking through links. Like nobody clicks a link because they already know like they're most likely doing like research on a product and they already know where to find it. Nobody clicks through links anymore. So I think that's definitely something I've noticed as well. But
Totally. And I think, I mean, there's two prongs there. Number one, I think the way to navigate that is by building a really trusting community. It's way easier said than done. But I think if you can language and build that trust and people can understand like, hey, like this is a part of the business and how I monetize, I think you can help offset that a little bit. The volume will never be the same. But then also, I think number two, the reason it's like this as well is because we've just been so inundated now with so many people having affiliate links, so many people just chucking products and marketing and marketing and marketing with no fucking actual trust or gusto in the links that they're marketing through that people are now just fed up and they're like, I'm so tired of being fed more links to click. I'm good. Like, I'm just going to do it on my own. So I think there's a two-prong approach there. Like, you can help offset that a little bit, but at the same time, like the train has already left the station and it will never, come back the same when it comes to the CTR for, article links and stuff like that because we're so inundated now of people who, can pump out droves of content just for link clicks. And I think that's what's also ruining the industries in many ways for content producers across the board is that the bar to entry is just so low and you could just pump out thousands of shitty little articles that they'll rank for a bit until they get hit and then people will just do that again and again and again, rinse and repeat, and it totally dilutes legit brands who are trying to build slow and sinking more time and effort into their content.
yes, I mean, I imagine you see that in the shoe world too, but you see that in the gym equipment world where people just sell on Amazon, they get enough bad reviews and they just start doing it again.
Yep. Same
Yeah.
thing, dude. Same exact thing. And like
Yep.
you even see it in the content space too. Like people who whip up these little and I've seen even garage gym review, like not garage gym reviews, but like garage gym review sites doing that in the sense of like I'm like I'll some like I don't know, like sometimes I'll just look up like, oh, who's ranking for best barbell right now? Let me see. And it's like, a couple big media companies which I'm just like, fuck off. Like you guys aren't
Oh
actually
yeah.
touching these barbells. And then you also have like these random small sites where I'm like, this is why sites like me got absolutely pummeled because you pieces of shit. You'll be relevant for like 6 months and you'll get slapped and then you'll just slap it into a new URL. And uh,
Or like
it's such a cluster up.
Sports Illustrated, who has this powerful website, will start writing about shoes.
Guess who?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, who ran their whole review vertical, right?
Is it
That was
Pillar 4?
Yeah, that was Pillar
Pil-
4 too. Yeah, they ran their whole thing. Like, dude,
They've
don't even get me
got a
started.
powerful business.
They do, but they just laid off a shit ton of employees. So like
Ooh, do you think?
they're also hurting. I would say I don't know how much, but I think they're also hurting. I just think everybody in the content space is feeling it right now. We're all hurting, and I think for bigger companies like that, maybe a little bit less because they have more assets. But I think they're definitely hurting too, and it might just not be as apparent.
Gotcha. And I mean, you see, it's funny because like I followed you and you wrote all day long for 2 years, and then you know big downgrade, and then you see like mega stars doing dances on TikTok, where it's like what's the value that they're providing? Like why is that making people millions, but like somebody who's actually providing value. I guess it's entertainment, and that's value, but that's
Yeah,
it's
we just
super
gotta sell our
frustrating.
we just gotta sell our souls, man. We just gotta sell our souls and make an OnlyFans.
Oh, never.
There's got to be
Uh,
like an OnlyFans garage gym angle there. There's got to be something there.
all right. Well, yeah. Let me move on. All right. So, what does that lead you to today? What are you up to today?
Yeah, so I mean, content is still a main pillar of the business, and that will not go away. I still plan to write articles and publish videos, even though those articles might not generate as much revenue as they used to. I still sink as much effort and energy into them just because they are a place. It's like my digital diary for shoe content where I get to organize my thoughts. And then it's also nice too because it's easier to update an article if a shoe starts to fail versus a video and having to do a full another video down the road, which I do updates as well, but just not as like seamless and timely as I can with an article. So the content is always going to be a pillar of that fit friend. But two other projects I have in the works include number one, we have a shoe store coming. So this is going to be a shoe store that is inside of a gym. So my friends who run Compound Performance, I'm sure lifters and athletes who follow this, you guys likely know Kyle Dobbs and Matt Domney. They are opening a gym in St. Louis called Coalition. I am partnering with them and a physical therapist who they're also bringing on to partner with them to build a shoe store in the gym. And the idea is making a fitness focused shoe store to where you can come in, try on shoes, and physically train in them before you buy. So in store, I'll have demo sizes. So let's say I carry the Hayes trainer. I'll have one size for every men's and women's shoe. You come in, try them on, and if you want to train in them, you can. And then basically you would check out through that Fit Friend shop and you have the full catalog of colorways. And so the reason I'm doing this is number one, it's hard for smaller, businesses, retail shops to carry a shit ton of inventory. So it's a little bit lighter on me and easier and agile to scale this because our goal is to land in multiple cities. But two, it's better, I think, for consumers because one, you get access to all the colorways. How often do you go into Dick's Sporting Goods to go buy, let's say, a running shoe or a Metcon model, etc., and they have like these weird ass colorways that you're like, damn,
Mm,
I just came in here. I'm at the buy
hmm.
offline anyways. Like, what the fuck? So that's what I'm trying to do with that is, create this first ever brick and mortar e-com experiential retail store for fitness focused shoes. A lot of companies have already committed, Born Primitive, Vivo Barefoot, Tolos, Innovate. A lot of these companies are in. I just had a conversation with Tier today. They are likely in, but I got to get them some more details as the store gets fleshed out, like pictures of the store and showing, like, hey, I actually have a brick and mortar. I'm not just saying that. Um, so that's going to be a really cool concept. And I think, too, something that's really useful with that is being a content first business. Like, there's so
Yes.
much content to be able to get with that store and the
Yes.
gym. So there's a ton of ideas I have with that. But then also, I'm buying one of those foot scanners that Vivo Barefoot has in their store in London. I went and used it. It was sick. So I want to get that and basically be able to scan, if you come in, your feet and then have a user profile where we can log that foot data and then we could track, hey, what sizes and what shoes fit best for you and what are you buying? Because I think that information aggregated over time could be really useful. Hey, Jake, you do a foot scan, or like you have an idea of your foot width and you know you kind of have a flatter foot, here are a bunch of data points that kind of replicate what your foot looks like, and here are the sizes and shoes, et cetera, that people are buying that find that these work really well. So I think that will be a really cool long-term play with it as well, outside of just selling shoes traditionally. Like having the data and content to back it up and build better sizing guides, I think will be an awesome tool for all consumers and everybody involved. It'll also help hopefully bring down return rates on shoes, so it's better on the environment, better on everybody's wallets. And then also I have a shoe in the works, and that will hopefully come out in fall or winter. Yeah, drafting right now a little bit of the upper and what I want it to look like. I can't share too much just yet, but that shoe I think is going to hopefully fill a need right now in the training shoe space that isn't being filled by a lot of shoes, or just, there are not a lot of players that are doing it well. And so this shoe is going to hopefully fill that. And then the goal is to also roll out kids sizes with the shoe as well, and make some cooler shoes for kids that have the features that I want with this model that are going to make it great for training. And yeah, man, it's been really cool, I think, diving into these projects, because these are things that I've always kind of dreamt of for the brand, but being a content only business, like I just didn't know how to get there, and I didn't really know how to segue into them and stuff. But I think put yourself into a place of like 12, 14 months of, revenue taking such a hit and stuff. And it's kind of like that, hey, like it's do or fucking die. That's kind of been this last year that it's really thrust me into this place of like, you know what, I'm going to do it and figure it out. And since doing that, things have just fallen into place really organically with it, to be honest. And it's been really cool. And I think that has to do with, like the energy and vibrations you're putting out there into the world. And, your frequency, speaking to the Green Lights book I just read from Matthew McConaughey, um, that like life just randomly like starts connecting these things. And the gym itself should be open in early June. So for all my Midwest folks out there, St. Louis folks, come through. If you're in the St. Louis area, please come sign up. It'd be sick to have you around and stuff. But yeah, man, there's a lot of projects in the works on top of the content now. So it's like funny thinking like shit, like that FitFriend used to be a content business, but now I'm hoping in the next year, 2 years, like content will be a pillar, but just a side pillar to help prop up the brand as a whole. And hopefully the e-com, brick and mortar, and shoe will be the main breadwinners for the business.
Yeah, that's, I mean, awesome. I love the idea. I also like how, it seems like you're going to be still kind of a content first business, like, or content led business, I should say. And hopefully that gets people to the store, and then the store and all the shoes, I guess, will help create even more content. So there's kind of like this flywheel that hopefully can happen. And I don't even think you can go into a Dick's Sporting Goods. I don't even think they have Nike Metcons there. Like I think they have running shoes and basketball shoes, and that's other like shoes you wear out. I don't think there's
Yeah.
anybody that you has shoes like this, especially
Well,
like the
some
smaller brands that you mentioned.
Well, some do like, and that's the thing, like Dick's will have like random Metcon nines and stuff, and like Rain six, like bigger brand shoes. But yeah, to your point, man. I mean, who carries Born Primitive shoes? Who carries Tier
Yeah.
shoes? Who carries these? Nobody. And so if I could just have a place to physically get more people to try these shoes on and be like, hey, here's something that, oh, you've been wearing Metcons your whole life. Here's something that you should also try and like, just see if you like. I think it's going to be sick, and it's going to be great for the community, because I know you probably feel this too, but like how many comments you answer every day about certain things with the gear you review and talk about, etc., where it's like if I could just have more people trying on a Haze trainer, I can give you way better feedback on if this shoe is going to work for you or not. And then if I can actually get you data in front of you, because I have an in-person store to where I can have these conversations and build this with people, everybody should hopefully win. It's going to be one of those things that hopefully rises all ships, in the sense of, you're making smarter choices, you're making better decisions, you're being way more savvy with your money as to what you should be spending on for your training needs. Um, but dude, yeah, the ability to be able to work with these smaller brands and like have an actual brick and mortar for them to try, it's a dream. And I think the ability to carry demo sizes, but not necessarily do traditional wholesale outright right now, at least, it's been beneficial, I think, for smaller companies who don't have endless inventory either, you know? It helps them manage their inventory better. And if it is more of an e-commerce angle there where it's like, hey, you buy through my shop and it ships from them, like it's bigger margins for smaller companies so they can hopefully continue to innovate and grow versus doing the other way around, taking less margins, they're making less money. So I hope this is one of those plays that can hopefully help rise all ships. Whether it's successful from the first month or if it takes like 6 months, it's all right. I've said enough. I have tapered my expectations to know it likely is going to take multiple months to flesh this out and build it because there is a lot of back end logistical stuff to build. That this is one of those projects, Jake, where people are like, "Aren't you stressed?" And I'm like, "Yeah," but at the same time, like I don't really have anybody I'm rivaling this off of or know of doing this, so I'm just going to stumble through it and learn as I go in many ways and kind of figure it out. You know, if it works, great, and we'll keep it ripping and keep it growing. But if it doesn't, we pivot and adjust and figure out how to make it work and adapt from there.
Yeah, and I think like who better to give feedback to these companies than someone like you as well. Like you can give these companies quite a bit of like free advice, basically. Um, so
And that's
you
kind
know,
of
I
that's kind
think
of my thought too. And that's what I've
yeah,
been trying to like pitch to them. I'm like, hey, like let's say you're rolling out a new weightlifting shoe. You can send me 10 pairs for members under embargo. I can keep those in store, but whenever they come in, they can try them on. And I can get you multiple data points from real users, not just paid athletes, talking about your shoes and how they are going to work and how they feel. And that I think to your point is like kind of one of the areas where my head goes where it's like, yeah, like we can create a standardized level of feedback here for companies. Like, well, they'll build better stuff. They won't have to just shoot in the dark and just hope they capture a mass market. Well, we can have an actual niche focused population that are going to be buying their shoes anyways, provide them feedback to hopefully make better stuff, more durable stuff, better fitting stuff.
yeah, yeah. My mind's spinning on how to even do.
Dude,
I mean,
so many
because
ways.
like a lot of I feel like I've been doing this for like 8 years, and a lot of the content I've pushed out has not necessarily been like affiliate links. It's been just like general home gym information from the community that is like free advice to companies, and I feel like that in turn, like a lot of people are like, oh, okay, then I'll sign up for a home gym con because you've been doing this for so long and you're just a name that we can trust. So there's just like there's value in that as well. I don't know how to like say how much that earns you, but if you like, and I think you're already that voice in the community today. But yeah, if you like, there hopefully these brands see the value, the effort you've put into this community, what you do with all of this information that pushes the industry forward. Like hopefully they see this and they're like, yeah, let's give them let's throw our shoes in the mix. So
I mean, to your point too, I'm also not stressing a ton about having every brand under the sun from the jump. I think that's also helped me where I'm like, I don't need to have every shoe ever reviewed and made in store right away. You know, like I think like talking to the tier guy today, he was super cool, but I could tell he was like trying to definitely suss me out and like, all right, is this guy legit? Like, is he gonna be like a good player? And I think like I was talking to him, I'm like, dude, I'm not even going after the Adidas and the Nikes from the jump. I don't care because I think if you build enough of a really solid platform, community, content, etc., people will eventually want to come into the works. Like for example, like Adidas doesn't do dropship stuff, so they would likely never want to partner with me. But I think if I build something sick enough, maybe we can have that good discussion down the road. If not,
yeah,
okay, that's fine. Like life will go on. There's plenty of shoes outside of that. But I think to your point, I think if you just build something and show up every single day and, try not to be a piece of shit to your community and to the community for the greater good, I think people will eventually come around and hopefully take a chance on that Fit Friend in the store. It's going to be a newer concept. I know a lot of bigger companies are going to be a little skittish because, like, who the fuck is this guy? But we'll see. Like, Under Armour just reached out to have a conversation. Like, I didn't even plan to reach out to them before go live. They just saw some of the social content. We're like, let's have a conversation. So I don't know what's going to happen with that, but at least I'm getting in front of them because like I believe in it. The community seems to believe in it. So we're just going to keep building it and hopefully, do it in the right way to get other people to be like, okay, like I understand how this is going to be beneficial for everybody.
Yeah. Say. Oh, so what does it take? And you stop me if you got to go. But what does it take for a company to sign up? And can you explain like what are the like what is needed?
Yeah, so it really varies from company to company. Right now, I'm kind of like figuring this out as I go. But for example, like I have that FitFriend shop. That's my online platform where I already sell shoes through. So some companies are already listed there. And basically, with those companies, they're like, yeah, we're already working with you. Like, we would love for you to wholesale demo and to have stuff in store. Like, we want people to get our shoes on their feet. Like, this is a net positive. But for some of the other companies, and especially the bigger companies, what I'm learning what is needed is basically like you have to show that you have a brick and mortar, especially companies that are like, we don't just do like only online drop ship type of models because we are doing like a hybrid sense here of like, hey, I have a brick and mortar to hold your shoes to get people in your shoes, but also, yeah, like people will be buying through online, and I won't necessarily have every colorway and hold stock for every single shoe. I will hold some, but not every single shoe. So I would just love to have access to all of them. Sometimes they need photos of the physical brick and mortar, so I'll have to get those for them once we finish our contracting and our demo and our build out and stuff. And then other companies, it's just literally getting in front of the right people and being like, hey, how do you do this on your end? Because how do we mesh this together? And these are all things that I'm kind of learning as I go.
Yeah.
But I think the big thing is just like getting me in front of people, and I can like I can help language hopefully and discuss why I think this is a good idea and why it could work. But it's just getting those conversations. I feel like that's the hardest part sometimes. But it's like it ebbs and flows based on every company, dude, and how they want to work with some people. Like some companies, for example, know that fit friend and they're like, yeah, we're in. Like they don't even ask for anything else. They're just like, yeah, we want to work with you. We're in.
Hmm.
So it really just varies a lot.
Yeah. Sounds familiar from like building
I
out
was gonna
home gym
say
con. It
home
sounds
gym con was
very
likely the same, right?
very familiar. There were some that were like, "Yep," and then there are some that, year three, it's way
I was
bigger than
gonna
it
say,
was, and there's still some
yeah.
people that are like, "Oh, I've never heard of it." So interesting. I mean, some like, I will say I think the number one thing that helped me like get it off the ground was the podcast. So like I had these like hour-long conversations with people, and then so I started the podcast. Had these like stories that I like, where you like kind of get a relationship just from doing a podcast with them. And then like 6 months later, I was like, all right, I'm doing home gym con. The first like 10 people that signed up were all people I did a podcast with, because like I don't know, like there's something to it. So we might
Dude,
want to bring the
it's
podcast
goodwill.
back.
It's
Yeah.
goodwill and just I think relationship building, you know. And I think we're in a day and age where there's not as much like handshake stuff going on as much and like face to face stuff. But to your point, it's like I have 4 years of content, and I think that's really helped get
Yes.
me at my foot in my door. When I reach out to most companies, it might be tough to find the right person right away, but generally speaking, it's like, hey, here's what I do. Like it's like I'm not just a random like influencer coming to you asking you to do this. Like I've built 4 years of content for your stuff, and I've never asked for a fucking thing. I buy all the
Right.
stuff I review, you know. So that's I think another big thing where it's just like a lot of goodwill, and I think that's why it's to your point so beneficial to have that backing of hey, I've done this. Like I'm not just coming to you out of the blue asking for good faith here, and like you to put your financial investment into me without knowing what I'm capable of and what I've built. And I think that's similar to like the community as well. Like answering comments, always showing up in DMs, or like trying to at least like be responsive to most folks most of the time. It's helped build this really, good community of like, hey, we don't know you. We might not necessarily live in St. Louis, but like we hope this succeeds. We want to see this succeed. And, it's been really cool. And I think that just has to do with showing up for people and really trying to build something that you're interested in and not just doing it just to make money and make as much as possible out of the gate. Because I'm sure you too in year three, you're like, look who's coming back around to join us. See, to the people who are probably like, no, no. And then it's like, well, I'm just going to keep fucking building it and you're going to come around. I will see you in year three.
Totally. I mean, I'm doing that. I mean, once you like, it's once you're providing something of value, or you're like pitching people that it's actually going to help them. They just don't know it yet. It's easy to keep going back and back and back for more. So yeah, I mean, build it the right way and it'll eventually like turn into something. It sounds like that's what you've done from day one.
Trying to,
Sure, you
trying
had
to.
some like bad breaks, but I do think if you truly do try and build it the right way, not try and monetize every single thing, don't take any shortcuts. Eventually, you'll be able to figure it out, and
I'm
people
a
will
huge believer in
back
it,
you.
dude.
Yeah,
Huge believer in it. And it's like speaking even to like getting Google to fly me out. The fact that I was even on Google HQ's radar as my little dinky shoe site, like I think it just speaks to, like they wouldn't do that if they had a sense of like this guy's sketchy or he's not doing like, I think the universe and like this is gonna sound woo woo, but since my dad passed in October, like a lot of things have just kind of like I've had like signs and like symbols and things just kind of like click. I think truthfully, when you put your best intentions out there and you try to do right by people for the most part and you try to show up for other people, it is insane how the universe will bring the right people, right connections, right things, right instances into your life at the right times. 2 years ago, I would not have had the foresight to think about building a store, building a shoe necessarily. Might have been on my radar, might have been in the dream book, but it never was like, oh, could be a reality.
yeah, hmm
Fast forward now, it's like, you put yourself out there enough in the right lens, and all of a sudden you're looking at life from a different point of view. And you're like, holy shit, I never even looked at my life like this. Like, I didn't think I was going to move back to St. Louis. I thought I was going to open a shoe store and different things, but like, my dad passed and I moved back to
right.
help out my mom. And then all of a sudden, like, things started like clicking. Like, hey, we're opening a gym. Would you want to open a shoe store in it? Yeah. Oh, you're opening a
Mm,
gym? I have a shoe store. I got a conversation with a shoe person, and they're like, I can help you build the shoe, and I'll, help you out with samples and not charge you for that out the ass and stuff. And now we're building a shoe. So I think they're just like little things that we can credit some of it to luck, sure. But I think it's just, you're showing up enough and putting enough shots on net with the right energy that
yes,
generally, you'll get fed the right things at the right time when you're ready.
totally. Yeah, it's still a numbers game, but yeah, take enough shots, things kind of hopefully fall into place. If you're lucky, if we're lucky. Um, cool. Well, I got to run here in a few, but anything else you want to chat about before we go? Call it.
I think I'm good. I feel like I inundated your people with enough shoe information for like the next year. Like, all right, cool. This is the shoe episode. I'll see you, shoe guy, in the next year. No, man. I think my only thing is just thanks for having me on, dude. I love catching up and I love getting to
Of
shoot the shit
course.
with you. And the internet friendship we've built has been awesome. And I will have to make my way to home gym con very soon. Like, where is it at this year again? Remind me of the city.
Louisville. So it's
Oh, dude, that's
three
so close.
three hours from St.
I'll
Louis.
be there. I'll fucking drive there. Yeah, done. Easy. I'm
Awesome.
there. I'll be there to shake your
Awesome.
fucking hand this year, dude. A hundred
Hopefully
percent.
it's not the weekend you're launching. It's the last weekend of June though. So
Done. I'll be there. Done. You
dude,
have my word
awesome.
right now as a man. I will fucking be there.
Awesome, man. Dude, can't wait.
It'll be
You'll
sick.
you'll actually get you'll actually get good content out of it. You can make a good vlog. Yeah, yeah. I think it'd be worth it.
Yeah, for 100%. I mean, fuck, dude. I'll gladly grab a beer with you. Yes.
Oh,
Yes. Say less.
please.
Say less.
Awesome, man. All right, well, great way to end it. Pump now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you so
again.
much
I'll
for
plug
having
all
me.
your plug. I'll plug all the information in so people can find you. But yeah, thanks, man.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, if you ever have questions about shoes, everybody, just hit me, reach out. And yeah, I appreciate the time, Jake.
You got it.